Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new experience, our first actual webinar on Zoom. I'm hoping you are all here without mishap and that the gods of technology have been kind. And I want to welcome Cynthia Jurs, who is one of life's great gifts and such a privilege for us all to be here together with you, Cynthia. And in a minute, we're going to do our usual stepping into the better intent together to create sacred space. And Cynthia will open that space for us. But before we do that, I just want to actually introduce her properly. Because she is a Tibetan Buddhist Lama, and I can't pronounce that. Can you pronounce that for me? Dharmacharya? Dharmacharya.
Yeah,
In the order of interbeing of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh, whose source of refuge and spiritual inspiration is Gaia. And this originated in 1990 when Cynthia made a life-changing pilgrimage to meet the hermit and meditation master. You can also pronounce that for me.
Kushuk Mangdon, or Charak Rinpoche.
Thank you so much. A 106-year-old Lama living in a remote cave in Nepal, from whom she received the practice of the earth treasure vases when she asked him, what can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth? There's a lot more I could say here about Cynthia, and you can go find it on the landing page and also on the Facebook event. But I would rather just say, here is a woman of extraordinary service and such unique beauty, who carries an extraordinary combination of absolute metal that is born of such deep spiritual practice and service, and grace, love, and compassion. So she's got that astonishing softness and expansiveness that gives her a presence unlike anything I've met to be with, but also this real cut through, which we need right now. Cynthia, I'm so grateful that you're with us.
I'm so grateful to be here, Claire, and I would say the same right back to you. Meeting you has been a gift in my life, like rare gifts that come along once in a while. And I'm so grateful to be able to share my path with you and all of TreeSisters. And I'm just so honored that you recognize the journey that I've been on and the gift that I'm here to offer. So let's dig in.
Yeah, well, it's rare. You're rare. And it's been a dream of mine from TreeSisters since the beginning that at some point we would start partnering with core teachers, so that we could be an ongoing support for you, but also so that we could consistently make all the offerings that you're doing available to the TreeSisters network, because everything that you're doing is aligned with what we're doing. So Cynthia is actually the first of, I don't know what we're going to call this new brand of TreeSisters teacher, but she's the first to come in. And that also means that when she's doing her offerings, when she's doing her courses and her teachings, she's also going to be planting trees, lots of trees. She's going to be growing a forest with us. So we're going to be having this beautiful reciprocity of our work together, both strengthening the service to Gaia at the evolutionary and emotional level in our network, but also it's going to put more trees in the ground.
Yeah, and how perfect is that for me after 30 years of carrying out this global healing practice all around the world, which we can talk about in a bit. But to partner with you in this way is to turn our prayers into action very, very directly. And it couldn't be more perfect. Yeah.
And both of us are sitting here with interesting internet. So I'm just going to invite everybody to call on the gods of technology and smoothness. And if anybody drops off, we'll just have a little moment of increased intimacy together. And with any luck, that won't happen, but bear with us. It would be lovely if everybody could just share where you're calling in from. There's a little, actually the chat would be fine. You should see at the bottom of your screen, there's a little chat. And if you want to just share, that would be extraordinary, especially if you're from one of the more unusual countries. Gosh, already America, Sweden, California, Bristol. Wow, that's moving fast. Whoa, crikey. Norway just flew past. Manchester, Michigan, Ireland, Florida, Austin, Texas, New Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Greece. Holy moly. Gosh, there's a lot from New Zealand. How are you awake? Portland, Oregon, South Africa, Canada. Wow, Australia, you're awake. Amazing. France, Netherlands. It makes me want to cry.
I know. So beautiful. Hello, everybody.
Hey, do you want to take over for a second while I burst into tears? Look at you all.
Yeah.
Iceland. Kristen. Kristen in Iceland. Hello, sweetheart. Scotland. Gosh, are you all seeing this as well? Somerset, from my home. Okay, so this is going to be good. I'm in tears before we've actually even started. South Dakota, more Canada, Germany, Pacific Northwest, Michigan, Argentina, Greece.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, this Israel, you know what okay, thank you for all of you being here. I just want to say thank you, and thank you for reducing me to tears before we've actually started. What touches me is that Cynthia's work, if you haven't known her, is going to come into these places. That this could be happening in Iceland and New Zealand and gosh, here I go. Because this matters to me so much. Oh, okay, thank you so much. I'm now a basket case. So we're going to move into sacred space together. So if you could all close your eyes and stop looking at my bright red face. Sorry for the sniffing. And let's find ourselves in our usual place in the forest outside of the Bedouin tent, just to prepare ourselves for a deeper experience and a stepping into sacred space. So just feel your feet on the earth, bare feet on the earth. Feel the presence of these miraculous tree beings all around us who have such grace and such wisdom. And just let your bodies soften. Soften enough to start feeling yourself able to breathe in the light from the sky. As if you can breathe it in through the whole surface of your skin. And as you breathe it in, know that your breath is a prayer and a gift from Gaia. And as you breathe in Gaia's breath, know that you belong to her. And as you let the beginning of that increased sense of belonging come, I want you to imagine that you can just drop off whatever, like see it like an old cloak, whatever right now has been bothering you or your day or your work or anything. Just imagine that you can literally just drop it to the floor and stand in your priestess self, your shamana self, your authentic self. And notice in your body how it feels to stand in a huge crowd of women from all over the world that are saying yes to their deeper self. We are here to share something together. We're here to start a journey together, hopefully a journey that will ripple through our whole lives. That whatever we know, perhaps we can hold ourselves open so that all the words spoken on this call land as if for the first time. That we bring ourselves newly to it. Just bow and thank one or two women that are standing around you. Just stroke a face or take a hand. Because at the deepest level, we are all the same longings, the same needs. And take someone's hand and just draw her with you into the tent. And as you enter the tent, just notice the atmosphere, the soft light, the fragrance, the sacred space that is ours, the circles of cushions and skins, the white gold spiraling light at the center. And just take your place in silence. And let's form these concentric circles like the rings of a tree. This particular constellation, this gathering that has never happened before in all of time and will never happen again, this uniqueness that we bring ourselves to, the quality of our listening, our shared listening, will affect the speaking, the transmission, and the receiving. So my invitation for all of us is to be in deep listening. So let's just reach out to our left and our right, to the hands of those sitting next to us. Let's form these circles and just send your love and gratitude down from your heart, your left arm, your left hand, so that we can just clockwise all the way around the circle send our love, our gratitude. And if at any point during this whole call questions arise for you, if you could put them in the Q&A box as opposed to the chat box, that would be really helpful for Cynthia and I, and we can come to them when we get to the Q&A section of this call, which will hopefully be on the hour. Might be a little sooner. Oh, and Cynthia, love, over to you to open the space.
Well, just to express gratitude for being in the center of this circle, these concentric circles like tree rings going out infinitely into the body of Mother Gaia. And each of us finding our place, finding our seat, standing in the light of our truth as women, as carriers of this sacred trust that we are embodying now in these times as we are called to step forward and to be together in this way. So I'd like to offer a prayer, some opening verses that I work with every time I begin a practice. That is my version of what we call in Buddhism the refuge prayer. It goes like this. Perfection of wisdom, mother of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and all beings, nourishing, holding, and healing all, great Mother Earth, precious jewel of the cosmos, to you we bow in gratitude. We take refuge in the earth as our teacher, the one who shows us the way in this life. We take refuge in the earth as an expression of the Dharma, the teachings of interbeing, understanding, and love. We take refuge in the earth as an embodiment of the Sangha, the vast interdependent community of life in balance and harmony. Living within the web of life on earth, we dedicate ourselves to embodying awakened awareness on the path of healing in service to all beings. We dedicate our lives to realizing our oneness with Gaia. So
I love listening to you. I love journeying in the texture of your words. There's always a very great difference to me between hearing words spoken and then hearing them spoken by somebody that lives them. It's a completely different vibrational reality, and it's one within which I feel like your words hold a gateway, and like in the listening to you, we get a transmission, and it's like the opening of a path that we can maneuver down.
Yeah.
So the structure of this call, I'll say what the structure is, then we'll probably go completely off-piste. But anyway, Cynthia and I are going to journey a little. We think we know where we're going, but generally speaking, it never works that way when you're really listening. What I really want to do towards the second part of the call before we get to Q&A is have Cynthia actually start to explain a little bit more about what we'll be doing on the second call so that you can know what that is. And also she's got some events coming up that I want her to introduce to you because to me they feel really important. So the timing of this call is very specifically prior to these particular trainings that she's offering so that as many of you as possible have got the opportunity to join her, because this work has never felt more crucial to me. It's never felt more crucial. And having spent time with the Kogi, not in Colombia, in Ecuador, and witnessing that particular culture and their way of being around the giving of offerings. I had that was my first real felt transmission from a people who know how to give offerings in a way that bring water to the surface, or know how to give offerings in a way that reduce the radiation at Fukushima, you know, who work consciously through prayer with Gaia in a way that is real, and it has real, measurable, tangible results. And that opened my mind in a way that kind of prepared me for meeting you and being able to receive the treasure vase as a thing that actually may have huge validity. So, you know, our Western minds just aren't built like this. We're just built to have this very one-dimensional, two-dimensional relationship with the planet. And it's a very big deal to think of her as a conscious being. And it's a very big deal to think about how our actions, both positive and negative, are influencing our direct relationship with her. So let's start with what drew you into the mountains to meet 106-year-old master? What drew you into that cave? I'd love you to tell us the story behind it, what the longings were, but also something of that experience so that we can come into that cave with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. It's so interesting that you mentioned the Kogi right off the bat, because they and their message to us from the heart of the world back in 1990, when they first came out and began to talk about what was happening, what they were seeing was happening to the earth, was one of the motivations that took me to meet Charok Rinpoche. And I was deeply affected by that message from the heart of the world, from the elder brother's warning is how it came through. And I felt like it just, came right into me. And I took that with me up into the Himalayas. And I had this invitation to go and meet this old wise man in the cave. And I was, literally walking up the path, kind of putting one foot in front of the other, going, wow, Cynthia, this is kind of an opportunity. It's not everybody gets to go ask a question of an old wise man in the cave. What are you going to ask him? And I didn't have a clue what I was going to ask him, but what eventually kind of rose to the surface in my contemplation as I was walking up the path, feeling the body of Mother Earth in my body was, and her pain back then, 30 years ago, which also was, I guess that awareness was also catalyzed by my connection to Joanna Macy, who at the time was very much all about nuclear guardianship and waking us up to the reality of the poisoning of the earth and the radioactive waste that is being generated, which completely alters the fabric of the web of life. So I was in the midst of grappling with all of these things. And what came to me to ask him was, what can we do to bring healing and protection to the earth, given these realities that are infiltrating our web of life now? And when I touched on that deep calling of my own and found that question, I knew that it was the question that I wanted to ask him, and I couldn't wait until the moment that I was given to bring that to him. So it's been my burning question, and it's still the same question. Even though what happened in that moment, I was there for several weeks. It took a while to make relations and sink into the land around this cave, which is way up in the probably 13,000, 14,000 feet up in the what's called the Solokhumbu region. We finally had the chance to meet with him specifically to ask my question. And so he looked at me, and he was very old. He died the next year. So he was,
wow.
Almost not even here. And yet he was completely present. He didn't miss a beat. He could hear and see and, get everything that was being said and a whole lot more. But he asked me what it was like, where I live and what was going on. And so that gave me the opening to start talking about the earth and to our bodies and what could we possibly do. And he said to me, even just one person practicing deeply in his language, really dedicating themselves to others, will bring benefit to the whole area around where they live.
Wow.
And then he said, but you, and he pointed at me and he said, you need to get these earth treasure vases and you need to put them in the ground and they will do that work. And my rational mind stopped because I couldn't possibly understand how a little clay pot filled with prayers and symbolic offerings was going to address the issues that we're facing. And yet the other part of me thought to myself, well, okay, this is what's coming to me. I respect this tradition. Where can I get some? We need to get these, And so long story short, he said, we needed to go to this nearby monastery, 3 more days walk, and ask the abbot to make them for us. And so we did that. And when I spoke to that Lama, he was very moved by the depth of my question, I guess. And also these are lamas that have never really even had never even been to the West. They live in a place that's on the other side of the veil. But yet they understood what we were talking about, what we are facing, and of course still facing even more now. So he brought out a lot of offerings that normally would not go into these pots, really sacred substances and relics and medicines that he said should be mixed into the clay and then consecrate the pots. They would do that for us and then give them to us to fill and seal and bury in the earth in places that are calling. And again, this was pretty unusual, maybe incredibly unusual, because normally the lamas do all of this kind of thing in a very specific way themselves. And we're lucky if maybe we get one of these treasure vases to take somewhere that's sort of already been done for us. But in our case, they gave them to us to fill with offerings ourselves and to take around the world. And, I thought, well, gosh, isn't there some practice I need to learn, And no, just put them in the ground. They'll do the work. I kept hearing this over and over again. So I was very overwhelmed with the assignment, where to possibly take them, and so they sat in my closet for probably 5 or 6 years before I had the sort of courage, but also before Gaia started really screaming and saying, you've got these, come on, let's start working with them. You know enough. You don't need to be a lama. You don't need to be you don't have to have some elder from some, native tradition telling you what to do. You do it. And so we started to work with them, we being my Sangha, my community here in Santa Fe, where I am. And so one thing led to another. And I think really, and then I'll stop because I'm sure you want to take this somewhere else, but, allowing us, giving us the opportunity to make our own offerings into the pots, I think it really brought the practice alive in a way that it needed in these times, because it's allowed everyone who participates to make the practice their own and offer what they love, what they care about, what is precious to them into this little vessel that holds all of our prayers and intentions and everything we care about, and allows us to get in touch with that. If they had done it for us, we would never have had that opportunity. And not only that, the people in Africa or Australia or Asia or South America or wherever it is we go, and we have taken 2 to Colombia with the Kogi now, one of which I will be going in June to accomplish, well, the second one. Anyway, by leaving the pots open, then it allows people and communities in those locations to make their own offerings that are meaningful to them, not just a Tibetan Buddhist, offering, but what is going to be really meaningful in the places that we go. And then these are sealed once they're full, and then they're planted like a seed in the earth. And they're planted in such a way that no one will ever know that they're there necessarily, unless it's a war zone, and then you have to have everybody know it's there. Otherwise, we plant them in a way, it's not about my land. It's about the collective experience. And we never know what will arise from this seed filled with all of our prayers and intentions. But amazing things have happened. And it has taught me that we are each a vessel, right? And that we, as you said before, the intentions that we carry do ripple out in all kinds of ways. Some of them are tangible and some of them are less tangible, but that doesn't mean that they are not having an effect. So now we have a global, what I call a mandala of these locations. There will be 70 locations when we're done. We have 15 left to dedicate. And these locations are like nodes on a mandala of the whole body of Mother Earth. And each of those locations is radiating light out, carrying all of our prayers. And it's really become like a something we can access, something we can draw from and give to as we do this work, as we carry on with, you know, transforming poison into wisdom.
There are about 6 different paths I want to go down right now. Like, oh, I want to talk about this. Oh, let's talk about that. And I have that fabulous perimenopausal brain that, largely speaking, can't remember anything after about 3 seconds. So we'll just figure out where we go. But first, I want to say, I think one of the textures that creates a recognition between you and I, or there's lots there actually. I mean, Tibet is so deeply important to me, and the vibration of the Himalayas, that changed my life forever. Going to the Himalayas gosh, it's over 20 years ago now, but I've never been the same since. That place, what comes out of that place. But there's something about someone who has said yes to what is asking to be lived inside them. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 of us here. And I think that's why when we saw each other, we just fell into each other's arms, because my God, it does something to you. It's like saying yes to the mystery that is encoded within your soul that you're never supposed to know any more about until you take that next step, and then it activates the next thing and it activates the next thing. And to all of you here, I just want to say, you know, many of us, and I did this and you did this while your pots were sitting in your closet for 5 years. I sat on TreeSisters for an entire year, just like sat there quivering, like, I can't do it, I can't do it. And I'm not negating that, because those times whilst we're sitting there going, I can't, I don't have the courage, it's still working on us. Like, it's still, you know, it's still calling us. It's like chipping away and it's still calling us. But there's something about saying yes to something that is a truth inside you that you have no concept how it's going to work, what it's going to do to you in the evolving. And generally speaking, if it frightens you or if it requires courage, you know that it is going to show you to yourself. It is going to evolve you in a way that ultimately takes you into a place of pure service. Like, I just want to, like, my spiritual teacher always said that the fastest way to yourself is to give yourself. So his entire culture was a culture of volunteering, because essentially he said, don't make up your mind about what you think you should be doing. Do what you're told to do and get on with it, and then trust the process. So I just want to acknowledge the part of you that said yes, and that when Gaia did start screaming, you got up and you didn't know, and you've done it all. And I'm sure it has crafted you in unfathomable ways, and taken you on journeys that you would never have, you know, you did not know what was lined up in front of you. But that's path number 1. Path number 2 is, as you're speaking, as I'm feeling into these treasure vases, as I'm contemplating the vibrational, alchemical magic or mystery that we just don't understand of sacred objects and prayer, and placing them in potentized pots that are already ceremonially potentized. I mean, that's what's happened to them. It takes me to a conversation that you and I have had before, and I'd love you to speak to this, because that's a vessel, but you're a vessel, and I'm a vessel, and everybody on this call is a vessel. And so I'm seeing that similarity, and also our blindness, our not knowing that vessel is such a potent thing that you can put it in the earth and it feeds Gaia. Mm-hmm. But everyone on this call is a potentized vessel whose consciousness feeds Gaia. And, you know, we can dwell on the crap that's been put into these pots, you know, all the conditioning that's taught us who we're not, all the fears that we've inherited, the stuff that's come in through our bloodlines and all the rest of it. But we're also full of prayer and intention and gifts and beauty and love. And so whilst you're burying these beautiful seeds of a consciousness that is so exquisite, there's also the movable consciousness pots that we are. So there's something there for me, and I just wanted to hand that over to you.
Yes. Yes. So we are, you're right, you know, we are potent vessels, each of us. And we go around most of the time ignoring that fact and telling ourselves all kinds of other stories and believing what the dominant culture is telling us, that we're not that. I go back to the teachings of the Buddha because, who I, by the way, imagine as a she. But I go back to the teachings of the Buddha because Buddha nature is something we all have. It's not out there in the Buddha or some other deity. It's here. We each have that. And that's what I mean by our true nature. And by nature, I mean our connection to Gaia, our part, our interbeing with her. We're not separate. So we're waking up to that now. And the old story, as Charles Eisenstein would say, is over. So this actually is a very old story. We know that too. But in any case, embodying that understanding, we realize that we are a potent vessel filled with gifts that is ours to give, and only ours to give, to the web of life, to creation. We have this amazing capacity to create and to be in harmony with each other and with the earth. And that is, you know, like, what else is there, right? So each of us in our own way. And this is what, for me, the treasure vases have taught me, is that everyone who holds them, first of all, kind of goes, even the most cynical people kind of go, oh, well, this feels like it's alive. You know, like it has energy, the little pot filled with all the prayers and offerings, because it does, it takes on life because of what we put into it. And then, you know, people make their offerings, and the offerings that people make, if they're really sincere, coming from their heart of hearts, are what is most important to them. And if it's in relationship to a place that they love, or a community that they're part of, or a part of the world that is suffering in some way, then whatever that offering is, whatever that prayer is, and prayer to me is just another word for intention. So if you're not religious and you get aversion to the word prayer, just think of, what is my intention? What do I most care about? And what do I want for the world around me? You know, and that becomes my offering. And when we make those kinds of offerings, and sometimes we might find something that's symbolic of that, and that goes into the little pot. And it's alchemy. Just like this is alchemy as we enter the path of transformation and awakening. But so we make our offerings, and then something has quickened in us that maybe we weren't even conscious was there before, but suddenly we're in touch with what we most love and care about. And that is the fuel for change. That is the fuel that is going to ripen into, like in your case, Claire, trees being planted all over the whole world, you know, forests of all kinds, mangroves, you know, whatever trees. What, I don't know what all the trees are that are getting planted, but they're getting planted. Beautiful, you know. So, and then you mentioned, just one last thing I want to say. You mentioned, you know, all the shit that we're putting into our vessels, and you know, a call like this, a practice like this, is inviting us to cultivate a different, what word do I want to use? Something other than all that shit, right? And sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, well, but we need to pay attention to all of that and make sure we're up to date on what's happening. And gosh, isn't it all so awful? And it is, yes, it's really bad. And we don't want to be in a place of ignoring that or bypassing that, pretending like it's not all happening. But what we really need to do is strengthen our capacity, and I'm getting really intense right now, but capacity to birth this other new old version of life that we are a part of, and to bring that forth as powerfully as we can. And you do that, and I love you for that, because you do it for all of us. But we all have to do it in our own ways, and some of us have these big canvases to paint, and some of us are just in our own little backyards. But it doesn't matter a bit. It's just to feed ourselves, nourish ourselves with what supports life and not death, not the destruction and the selfish greed that has got us into this situation. So I'm going to take a breath and return to a little bit more of an equanimous responsiveness here. But that's where I'm coming from. Thank you for asking.
Well, and you can do the equanimity, because that certainly is not my strength. And in fact, like, what's equanimity? I want to just remember, I love that you've brought Joanna Macy into the space. I want to remember Barbara Marx Hubbard for a second. And the message she gave me when I happened to find myself sitting across the aisle from her on a plane, when I was bawling my eyes out, having just spent 10 hours driving through Colorado and only seeing dead or dying trees. And sitting there going, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. Just like, there's no point. And, I want to speak to that part of all of us that is like, in some degree of complete shock and horror about what is unfolding. And Joanna Macy, she's here with us with the message of the Shambhala warriors. This time has been prophesied. Those of us that are awakening are finding each other. This is one of those instances, total instant recognition.
Yeah. This
time has always been coming. We don't know what's on the other side. The Kogi are fascinating talking to them about it. They say they can't see but beyond 2026, but actually they're still saying, no, women should be giving birth to children. Like, we need the energy of birth. Women are the source of all power on the planet, But Joanna, Barbara, when she finally woke up, God bless her, and saw me and like reached across the aisle and grabbed my hand and gazed at me with those big beady eyes of her. And I just said, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, Ugh! And she said, Claire, you have to find your intimacy with the evolutionary impulse. You have to find your intimacy with the evolutionary impulse. And I got this complete Barbara transmission, and my whole consciousness just went boof. And in that moment, I lifted out of my desperation with the furniture of existence that was all going to shit. Mm-hmm. And I merged with the frequency of creation within which all possibility exists.
Beautiful.
And I just went, oh, there's a much bigger intelligence running the show.
Yeah.
Why the hell am I taking this all so personally? Well, I know why I'm taking it personally, because I love this planet more than anything else, and every species that goes, I take personally. I don't know how not to. I love this world, and that's why I am the opposite of equanimity right now. But there is also limitless support available to us inside the frequency of creation that creates and destroys everything, that is the texture that fuses everything together, that is a source of ongoing, endless intimacy. And you have to soften in order to be able to open to it. You can't be in, oh my God, it's all going to shit. You can't be there. Mm-mm. You can't do it, because then you can't feel anything. You can't log on. And if you can't log on, you're just floating in the sea of chaos, watching disaster after disaster, you're absolutely no use to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, this practice, this capacity, you know, on one level,
Mm-hmm.
the capacity that both of us have, I recognize as being also like carved out through grief. Like there is a particular texture of a soul that has allowed its heart to break again and again and again. And what that does is it opens you and it opens you and it opens you. So there's more space and more capacity. Yeah. But then there's also this place of service, this place of, and I will just give myself and I will give myself, and it tempers you in a completely other way. And it allows for a different way of being in the world that isn't flattened by everything, that can stay in your center. I can hear my team laughing, saying Claire in her center, but actually, yeah, enough to be able to continue the work and not, I used to spend weeks or months on the floor in pieces about what's going on in the world. It doesn't happen anymore because it's flipped into service.
Right.
And, you know, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the reality of how the hell do we work as hard as we do and serve as much as we do and not get burnt out.
Right, right.
Which I'll just park that one on your lap and see what you do with.
I can respond to what you're saying. So anyway, thank you. I just want to pause for a moment and just say, wow. So many blessings are here in this moment with us and with everyone who is listening. I just feel everyone out there really strongly. And I feel like we're all kind of on the edge of our seats, and that there is something here that is, as we said a minute ago, very, very potent. So let's water that seed in each of us. And so one way that I have cultivated that in my own life, because I too, like you, have, you know, been on the floor grieving, overwhelmed time and time and time again with the job, completely, you know, so committed because I too love her so much that I care incredibly deeply and want to just do what I can. And this is what's been given to me. And it's taken everything that I have. And so the only way that I have been able to keep going, really, without losing it, is to stop occasionally and throughout every day. Because stopping is really a radical act. Thich Nhat Hanh said that, by the way. Stopping is a radical act because we are habitually driven. And we are driven not only in our own lives, but the whole world around us is driving us and driving, you know, it. So taking time out is one way of actually describing what meditation is. Meditation really is just about stopping our monkey mind, our habitual, you know, grasping at, or the lists, or the reactivity, or the emotional, you know, concerns and fears and all of those things that we think we have to do, that are driving us. Meditation is about coming back, whether it's for 1 hour or 1 minute, to our place of our source of being. And the best way that I know to do that, and I'm sure you and everybody else here has had this experience, right, is to just breathe and let all those thoughts fall away. Let all of those concerns of thinking where we have to be in the future or what happened in the past fall away, and have that little time out. And sometimes we need more than a day or an hour or a minute. We need actually a month to catch up with ourselves. But it, you know, it takes different forms at different times. And the point is to come back to that place on a regular basis where there is actually nothing to do but to refresh ourselves and to reconnect with the web of life in ourselves, reconnect with our true self, our true source, and just be with that. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about the calm abiding. Okay, so it's a practice of going back to that place where we can access that sense of calm abiding, peace, where there's nothing to do for a moment. There's just nothing to do. It's all right here. And we can just be with that and take another breath, and return over and over again to the present moment, which is, of course, the only moment. What happens in life is not happening in the future, and it's not happening in the past. It's happening right now. So training ourselves to access that without having an idea about what we think it should be, but simply resting in that sense of being for long enough, and this is where the practice part comes in, long enough that what arises is more clear. What arises in our awareness is the clarity about what the next step is. And then from that clarity, we have that sense of knowing, right, that was what she was actually saying, or that's what is the next step on the path. And acting from that place of knowing is a way to act in partnership with Gaia.
That's what we call feminine nature-based leadership.
That's right.
And I would love to be able to, we will transcribe everything that you've just come out and said, and then put a redefinition of what feminine nature-based leadership and put everything that you just said underneath it.
Yeah.
Because when we're in here and when we're running, I see us as a clench.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a clench, you can't listen. And when I'm on the floor in pieces, I can't listen. And that's the thing about if you can soften enough to to open and fall into a state of connection, then what rises through you comes from that place of clarity. And unless it's coming from that place of clarity, we're just going to perpetuate more of the same.
Exactly. And the world is a mess. And when we perpetuate just the same old, we're just going around and around and around, and it's not going anywhere, and it's just contributing to more of the mess. So that's why it's so important to stop and to find that place so that we don't, what our actions are not habitually, desperately just taking us down the drain.
I know. This is one of the radical things right from the car crash, and it's something that we've been trying to practice inside of TreeSisters. I'm not very good at it, but when I had the car crash and I heard women are the missing piece, you have to mobilize the women are the missing piece. Women are the womb carriers, and earth is womb. Women understand the cycles of life and death that happens in their bodies every month. What's happened to women has happened to nature. You share a common history. And part of that was women we're like this, actually, but, we're certainly like this. We bleed and then we ovulate, and then we bleed and then we ovulate. And if we're not bleeding and ovulating anymore, we're still in that lunar cycle, and that lunar cycle requires a resting phase. It doesn't, you're not an apple tree that is supposed to be producing apples all year round. The apple tree produces apples, we ovulate well if we rest properly.
Yeah.
And what women have been taught away from is the wisdom of our own bodies. And so what the world has been taught away from is the wisdom of living seasonal lives that run with nature. So we've forgotten how to stop. We've forgotten how to stop And we've forgotten how to stop as women. And so, you know, in TreeSisters, we're supposed to take either day 1 or day 2 of our bleed off to do visioning for the organization. I say supposed to, because generally speaking, I plan that, and then my bleed decides to be 5 days later, or like it lands when it wants to. But we encourage each other to actually properly rest, because health as a woman has to start with our relationship with our own cycles, because otherwise we're treating our bodies the way we're treating our planet. And it's one of the reasons why I haven't given up. I'll never give up, but it's one of the reasons why I haven't given up, even though the science says we're done, it's over. I'm sat there saying, we have no idea what could happen when the world's women remember who they are, step into the cycles of their own bodies, bring through feminine nature-based leadership that arises from a felt sense of connection to life, can conjure energy that is pouring through them from all that is, that have realized that we're not separate, that have realized that we're infinitely frigging powerful and creative. That world has not become available to us. When I witness what the Kogi can do and what other shamans can do, who are living in right relationship with nature as part of nature, then I'm seeing what to me is a human being, a genuine human being, who is in relationship with everything as sacred, who understands that they're part of, not separate to or superior to, and therefore has colossal power and potency that could never dominate life, because they understand that they simply are life and they are woven into the fabric of all things. Women have been taught away from who and what we are. We've been taught away from our wildness, our cyclical natures, our capacity for intimacy, our capacity from relationship. Our emotionality has been shamed. We've been seen as less than. But why? Why do you have to force something down and subjugate it? Why do you have to teach it that it's less than? Why do you have to pull it away from its cycles, unless it is extraordinarily powerful? And that takes me to the place of what TreeSisters is actually for, which is rekindling reciprocity. Give and take.
Mm-hmm.
Not just take. And as a woman, not just giving. Taking time for ourselves. Actually allowing ourselves to stop. Realizing that we do exist and that we have value if we're not being servant to all. Realizing that we're not less than. Realizing that what comes through us has enormous value. Realizing that it actually is vital and that our world hangs in the balance between a masculine force that is profoundly lost and trying to find itself, and a feminine force that is afraid of its own power and needs not to be. So that we can actually bring the wisdom of living cyclically in reciprocity and honoring the cycles. Now I'm doing the first thing, like honoring really, what does it mean to be a woman? You know, and isn't that amazingly exciting? And isn't it extraordinary to feel women all the way around the world right now in this moment going, right, okay, I am a sacred vessel. And, you know, in the way that we're all forever changed by holding a newborn baby or a young child, that vibration of purity, that's in you. That's not gone anywhere. It may have been buried under conditioning, but we all have that access to pure love and consciousness, and that sacred treasure vase that we all are can be activated by each of us seeing it in each other and being a stand for it in each other. And then, oh my God, how amazing to think about learning this practice with you, so that the act of learning the practice can remind us what we are. And in remembering what we are, we can then give this extraordinary gift and these blessings to our mother in a way that says, wow, we've taken from you and taken from you and taken from you. And in the Kogi's way of giving payments, we've got to start giving back. We've got to start nourishing her. We can't just keep sucking her dry. And actually, our blessings and our prayers and our love really feed her.
Yes. 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 It was
Would you
interesting
like
is,
to
yeah.
go for it? Go for it.
Well, as you were talking, I had this sort of image coming to me about, you were talking about the need for stopping and resting, and how TreeSisters is hoping and trying to do that, and how we're all trying to do that, but get so caught. And what was coming to me was the reciprocity. If we could do that just simply with each other, like, I'm you and you are me. And there's really no place where I leave off and you begin. It's like this. And so what the image I had was, I can, again, I'm invoking Thich Nhat Hanh a lot. He made these little stickers that went in our shoes once, years and years ago. We put in our shoes, it said, "I will walk for you." And every
Oh, it's
time we slipped on
beautiful.
our shoes, we had that awareness. So, if you're tired and you're needing to stop, and you tell me, then I walk for you. And if it's my turn to take a breath and retreat, maybe you carry that torch a little bit for me. And we can each do that for each other, because that's what we can do. And instead of getting caught in the competition and the that horrible thing of trying to get there first or whatever it is, like, let's just set that aside and know that we're all going in that direction. And it's like the geese flying, one moves into the front and falls in the back, and so that was an image that I had. And I also wanted to touch on the sort of trauma that all of us women are carrying, each again in our own way, and how much that is a factor in our being able, more or less able, to do what we're talking about. I mean, I know you, and then also the healing that the earth is calling for, that we too are engaged in our own ways. And I mean, in my own case, rape is a core wound that I have carried, and that has been part of my, the healing of that has been part of this calling. And in, I believe, your case, it's the poisoning, that your body has suffered, that is reflected also in the earth, because in both cases the earth is being raped and being poisoned, and we are carrying that. And the implications of that, being enacted upon the bodies of women, and what we have put ourselves through, every single person on this call is dealing with that in one way or another. And so as we do our own healing, and the stopping is part of what we require to heal, right? We have to know, in that place of knowing, that as we do our own healing, we are healing the earth. There's no separation.
Something about that has really come through in this for me when I was holding myself as a treasure vase and then holding a treasure vase. It was just like, there really is no separation. I think you have to feel it at a different level. I'm really aware that time is marching on here, and yes, I could talk to you for hours, and I want to give us some time for question and answers here.
Yes.
I'll just say to everybody very briefly, because some of you are having to leave now because we're on the hour. It's really, really important to me that we get as many people onto this training that Cynthia is going to offer to us in February as physically possible, from all around the world, because women need to understand how to do this, not just for Gaia, but for ourselves. This is the thing, like, this feels incredibly healing and nurturing, even down to just the holding some sort of an offering and meeting the part of you that remembers how to do that. Like re-encountering the priestesses that we are, whatever that means for you, that we have agency, that we have mystical capacities, whether you know it or not. You're a woman, you do, it's what we are. And so we're going to be guided through this process. And Cynthia, I'll ask you to say a little bit about it in a minute, or maybe not. I mean, actually, frankly, the whole purpose of this, I think you've understood that we're going to be taught a form of doing ceremony, because the intention is that one of these vases is going to be taken into the Amazon, another one in the Bering Strait, probably at summer solstice this year. And we're getting to the stage now where we need to be actually activating these centers like a grid around the planet, in order to basically, I mean, my way of saying this is like boosting Gaia's immune system. Like we have got to hold her while humanity is going through this death and rebirth process that looks an awful lot more like death than rebirth. But if we can hold our prayer and our intention in this grid around the planet, then we're doing something real. We're doing something really, really real. And it's something that we can do every new moon or every full moon. It's a practice that we can bring into our lives. So if you go to the page that was the sign up for this, which is treesisters.org/loving-Gaia, and Tara, if you could just add it again in the chat right now, there'll be a sign up for that second call, which will be on the 6th of February. Thank you, Tara. So on the 6th of February, and we're asking for a donation for it. We're asking for it not to be free. We're asking for you to care enough to want to give back. The funds that come in are going to be split separately, like 50-50 between TreeSisters and Cynthia's work. So ours, if you give a donation of $20 for that call, half of that is going to go and help Cynthia's work in the Amazon, around the treasure vase in the Amazon directly. Half of it will go into the ground as trees. So that would be 10 trees, and then the rest would go to the Amazon. So this is an actual way of giving to yourself, learning a practice, planting trees, and serving the treasure vase in the Amazon. So I'd love to offer that out. Yeah, like offer that out to you as something that we all need. I need this. I need to learn this practice. I quite often go outside to give an offering and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like such a Westerner, but I know it's in here. I know it's in here. And so Cynthia, in effect, is going to be calling that out of us. And Cynthia is also offering a Tara Gaia practice. Cynthia, can you just in like 1 minute share what's coming through you and when it is, so that, and then we'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to answering some of these questions. I just took a look at all your comments and it's so wonderful to see. And so yeah, the Tara Gaia is something I'm going to be teaching the weekend of the 8th and 9th. And there's actually a free call on this Saturday to introduce her to people. But, you know, I've been practicing in the Buddhist tradition for many years, maybe lifetimes. And finally, as I've been carrying out this whole practice in relationship to the earth, I realized that it's Gaia that I wanted to have a personal, direct relationship with. And having practiced with Tara for many years, she began to evolve into an embodiment of Gaia that I could take into myself and work with. So I'll be explaining how this works. It's the basis of the practice is coming out of the Tibetan tradition. So if you know anything at all about how that works, some of the practices include mantra recitations, and I have a mantra for Gaia and a visualization that we do to connect with the web of life. So briefly, that is what this is. It's going to be very fun for me to bring her out. I've been practicing with her myself personally for some years, and it just feels like now's the time to bring her out. And I'm looking forward, once people learn the practice, to having a monthly group where we do the practice together. And So it's just another way. There's so many ways of practicing and cultivating these kinds of intentions. And this is just another way of doing that. So it's not for everybody because it's very, it's a visualization and it's a recitation and it's a mantra practice and all of that sort of thing. So if that appeals to you, please come and check it out. Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
It'd help if I unmuted myself. So we'll put all the details of your free call and Tara Gaia into the email that goes out with the recording of this for everybody, so that you'll have all the details. Now, let's leap into the question and answers. There's 10 there already. I know there's been more that have been coming through here.
Claire, let me just add, because you said this, but just to underline it, the next call that you and I are going to do together on the 6th of February will really take this group into the practice of the Earth Treasure Vase, global healing meditation. And so we'll go much more into that. And we will also be initiating the Treasure Vase for the Amazon. So this is just in a nutshell, wanted to say that. So that is the basis of what we'll be doing next time.
So it's on the 6th of February. It's called Earth Healing Practices for Gaia, Initiation, Sacred Activism, and Ceremony for the Amazon.
Yeah.
And we will literally have the treasure vase with us. Cynthia will have it, and we will be making offerings with her. She'll be teaching us the practice, and we will be filling it with our intentions. And so part of you will be going into the Amazon inside of this learning experience that hopefully will also teach all of us how to do sacred offerings where we are, in a way that we can lean into, for many reasons, but for me also an antidote to distress, like a way of plugging yourself back into the hope field and the love field and the healing field. Like, this is where we need to be conjuring the healing field as like the single pointed focus of our intention. And that's also what our full moon calls are going to be doing from here on in, starting in February, working with the intention of the healing field for Gaia and her forests. Okay, woohoo. I am, oh, and I just asked Tara whether we were going to get bumped off at 12:30. We're not, so we can go over a little bit, which is great if we've got questions that we really want to keep answering. So, yes, Cynthia, would you like to share us a copy of your refuge prayer so we could email that inside the email that goes out to everybody?
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah, we can make that available, and you can all do it. Thank you. Definitely.
Okay, so prayers and details will come out. Dana, how do we strengthen our capacity to birth the new story, specifically rest and creativity and community and nature?
Yep.
She's given herself her own answer.
That sounds like a good recipe. And rest really speaks to that whole point about stopping and taking a breath and coming back to see more clearly what is the next step that's not conditioned by the old story, but is really coming from out of the moment, out of our own deepest calling. Yeah.
You know, did you have any children, Cynthia?
Not physically.
No, me neither. And it's interesting, when I read that, I suddenly go, wow, all these mothers who have actually had the birthing experience, you know how to birth a new story. You really know how to birth a new story. What if you actually tune back in, even consider yourselves pregnant? What if we all considered ourselves pregnant with the new story? What if we chose to perceive that we are alive right now? That makes me want to cry, because we have got the capacity for the new story. I do believe it's one of the reasons why the Dalai Lama has said it's the Western women that will, whatever it is, save the world. I don't know about saving the world, but certainly birth a new story, because women are the birthers. It's what we're for. It's what we do. And we prepare for the birth, and then we nurture the offspring of that birth. And those of us that have not had children, you know, I've often thought to myself, you know, I had 2 miscarriages. I wanted to be pregnant for a while, but it seems like my body's just never been healthy enough to actually produce a child. But I've produced TreeSisters. This is my baby. Yeah. And God, she's a demanding baby, but nevertheless, well, she's not really a baby anymore. But I do know how to birth. I've birthed this. Yeah. And you've birthed what you're doing. And so whether we've actually produced a child or not, we have the apparatus to birth new realities. And I think part of strengthening our capacity to birth it is to know that, is to know it, is even to think that this is what makes us so powerful. Isn't this what has made patriarchy try and crush us? The fact that we can birth a new reality, the fact that we can birth in a way that science cannot comprehend what we're capable of. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I always call our meditation circles birthing circles. Mm-hmm. Because there's something that happens when women come into circle, because that circle is a womb, because that circle cannot sit still, because energy always flows around it, because whenever you sit in circle with women, something other becomes possible. So how about we actually all just bow to the mystery and genius of our creative bodies and know that we are here now to help birth the new story, and then feed that in whatever way we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to read these? Can you see them? Do you want me to read them out? Being a guardian of a Mother Earth gratitude place of big stones here in somewhere unpronounceable in the Netherlands, can I invite you to please bring one of the treasure vases to this special place with all Dutch tree sisters in their circles in a ceremony with many songs preparing the vase together?
So the situation with stewarding a new vase is this. We have a council now of like an Earth Treasure Vase Stewardship Council that is determining where the last 15 of the original vases are going to go. And if you're interested in stewarding one, you need to get in touch with us and tell us what your calling is. There's so many parts of the world that we haven't yet been, that we're really trying to focus these ones on going out to fill in the places in the mandala that haven't been filled in yet. So that's kind of our focus. But one of the retreats that I'll be teaching in April, end of April this year, is here in New Mexico at Ghost Ranch, crafting earthen vessels with a beautiful friend and elder named Mary Naranjo, and some of her native sisters who are also potters will be teaching us the practice of making a holy vessel. And we'll have the chance, everyone who comes will have the chance to make their own and to then consecrate it there and take it out to the place that you are called to take one of these and work with your own community. So if that is something that you would like to do, please get in touch with us. And I have a feeling that retreat may happen more than once also. So if like April is not, yeah, it's the way, like once the vases that were made for us in Nepal are fulfilled, accomplished in the ground, you know, then it's a matter of making our own and taking them where they need to go. So we can talk about that more later, but be in touch, earthtreasurevase.org. You can get involved and then we'll take it where it needs to go.
earthtreasurevase.org. And also if there's any other details that we can get, we'll also put them in the email that we're sending out. But but there's the thing. I mean, this is where I'm wanting this to go. I'm wanting this to go to the place that we can create our own. We recognize ourselves as that. We can create other forms of offering. There are other ways of doing offering. You know, remember the Kogi saying to us, You know, you have to give your menstrual blood to the earth. You have to give it to the earth. It's the most sacred thing you can give to her. And so I painstakingly do that every month in all the ways that I can. I refuse to let it go anywhere other than to planet. And yet, in the same way that I've struggled to know how to reconnect to my ancestors, but I'm finally making that journey now, my own feeling of how to give offerings feels so like I've never learned to drive that car. It's a terrible analogy, but I get in and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. You know, I feel that way around offerings, although I'm sure the most powerful way I've given offerings has been through my tears and my love. You know, she cannot fail to know that she is loved. And I would love to have the guidance of, you know, a true teacher in that. Okay, so from Ruthie, can we tree sisters with intention and ceremony activate the current treasure vases to thank and nourish the trees? Yes, and potential for verdant restoration in the bioregions where they are lovingly planted. Yeah. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and Cynthia will speak to this, what means the most to us in our prayers will bring the most potency. So it's not a question of what we think we should be praying for. It's what rises through us on behalf of all that is. That is a potent prayer. That is what we'll be doing every full moon. That's what Cynthia already does every full moon.
So, yeah, I do lead this meditation, this one that we're talking about, the Earth Treasure Vase Global Healing Meditation, every full moon. And we do it, we've been doing it for 30 years. And now we do it virtually. I know you all have your own full moon practice. So, but somehow we'll figure out how to.
Yeah, well, they don't always land on full moon. Ours don't always land on full moon because I won't work at the weekends. You know, I need to take some time off. So quite often they're just on either side of a full moon. So if yours are always on full moon, then there could be a way. But again, you know.
Yeah. So that you'll understand and have an experience of the practice on the 6th of February, because we'll do it together. And we'll invoke all the locations where the treasure vases have gone all around the world. And we will imagine them being activated. And yes, you know, I mean, one of the reasons why I think it's so important and beautiful to dedicate one of the treasure vases to the Amazon is to really, really focus on the forests. And one of the things that's come clear over the years in working with these is that certain locations, certain treasure vases carry an intention for the whole earth. So this particular one going into the Amazon is a way to really direct all of our prayers about the reforestation of the Amazon, and not just the Amazon, but the whole world. So it's going to be planted in the Amazon, but it will be carrying that intention for the forests of the world. And, you know, there was another vase that was buried in the Congo that I took over to the Congo to work with the women. And, you know, it was a whole long story that we don't have time for, but where it got buried is in the forest of the Congo with the Pygmy people, who are the forest people. We made that offering and talked about the importance of their forests for the whole earth, the forest in Congo, second only to the forest in Brazil. And they didn't even know at the time that this was so important. And now they're planting trees in Congo. And we're going to hook you guys into that tree forestation program.
We're hooked.
So many stories. So not all, yeah, anyway, I'll stop there.
Well, no, I mean, tell us a little bit more about that project, because we are already in contact. And we are, you know, it's my intention that we work somehow, that we actually can. I actually think it'll work because I know who they're working with, you know, with Osprey. I think we will be able to, they'll pass diligence and we'll be able to start planting with them. I mean, what's really interesting here again is Cynthia's worked in the Congo. I was already starting those connections with the Congo before we talked about this, with this exactly the same women's group that are planting. You know, we've just moved into the Amazon TreeSisters. It's the exact same tribe that, in the exact same part of the Amazon that Cynthia has already been in discussions about taking the treasure vase. And when you look at that, you know, Cynthia and I just finding each other, and already our worlds beyond ourselves are already doing this in all these different ways. You have to believe that there is a greater intelligence that's running the show. You have to believe it. So there was something interesting, I can't remember what it was, but that you wanted to share about some of the women in the Congo and what had happened since you've actually planted the treasure vase. Can you say a little more about that?
Well, I was there with an amazing woman that I hadn't met until I got there. Now, maybe some of you have heard of her. Her name is Nema Namadamu. And she was the one who welcomed me to Congo with the treasure vase. And we did a whole lot together to empower women to tell their stories and to become a voice for change in that part of the world and healing. And Nema has now gone on to found something she calls Hero Women Rising. She has become a real force, a real force to be reckoned with. And she's one of my sisters. And so when we did a lot of things in Congo, but eventually where we ended up was in the forest with the treasure vase, because I knew before I even went there that where it needed to be buried was in the forest, because the forests of Congo are so important to the whole earth. And Nema, along with everyone else that was there, didn't really at the time, this was 2012, didn't really at the time quite realize the importance of the forest of Congo. And so what came out of that, among other things, was this impulse to plant trees. And I connected Nema with Osprey Oriole Lake, the founder of the Women's Earth and Climate.
Oh, it was you that made that link.
Yeah. And so one thing leads to another, you know, and some of these treasure vases, they have very tangible outcomes. And this is an example of a very tangible outcome that came from pouring our prayers into this little vessel and then planting it in the earth. And then people go, oh, well, that was important. And what is this about our trees? You know, the trees, the forests that are diminishing here, can't we do more? So now they have these tree planting projects in that part of the world, and women's empowerment and all kinds of other things that are going on there. And I feel like it's all connected. And you're right, Claire, you know, when these little synchronicities happen, which aren't so little really, then we have to pay attention. And it's happening now with the Amazon, and in the sense that we're both directing ourselves in the same place. And so it seems like it's meant to be that's where this next treasure vase will go. So yeah, every location has a story. That's why I'm writing a book. You'll all have to read my book,
which I'm very excited and to read.
Yeah.
So you know, the Democratic Republic of Congo is one of the most violent places for women on the face of the planet.
That's right.
And what Osprey and I are hoping, Cynthia, is that we can actually turn that project into a pilot project to actually see if we can go get funding to help that become a pilot for other women's groups all around the world, essentially, but certainly Africa, because we're constantly reached out to by women there who want to start things. And we may well be, it's really exciting actually. So there's a whole thing that is just now simmering around the Congo project. I'm really aware that we should be stopping now. I want to acknowledge that and then completely ignore it. For those of you that need to go, yes. And there's really amazing things happening here in the chat. I just love what Jennifer Como wrote about Dina Metzger. It's really worth reading that and actually, you know, copying it and putting it somewhere. Irene here says, please can you say more about seeing the Buddha as a she?
Oh yeah. Question before we do that. I really have wanted to read everything in the chat, but I haven't been able to.
We can collect it all.
Is there a way that you guys can give that to me? Yeah.
Yes, we can collect it all.
Okay. And by the way, Dina Metzger has been a huge influence in my life, and is responsible for our taking a treasure vase to Liberia, which has been another very tangible place where we've gone and many things have happened, and ongoing peace building program there. But anyway, in terms of the Buddha as a she, well, I didn't really quite realize for so many years that I was craving a an example in a feminine form and of enlightenment or of awakening. And I love the Buddha, you know, and I love men. But when I finally allowed myself to imagine the Buddha as a woman, it changed my life. And I suddenly felt liberated to walk my own path. And so I'm working with that now. And it's actually, she makes an appearance in the book that I'm writing, which is called Summoned by the Earth, the book. And as you may know, if you are familiar with the story of the Buddha, when the Buddha was on the verge of enlightenment, sitting under a tree, which, as far as I know, is the only story of a spiritual figure sitting at the base of a tree at that moment, after much suffering and ongoing exploration and everything else. And then when the awareness began to dawn and take root, what happened was that the Buddha touched the earth to summon the earth to witness that moment. And I find that to be such an unbelievably remarkable gesture that, again, no one else in any story like it has ever done, right? So what better witness than the earth to our experience, whatever it is, whether we're crawling around grieving and crying, or we're on at the moment of our own great awakening. You know, that summoning the earth was a moment of summoning the entire web of life to our own participation in that, because the web of life is an expression of such great awareness and interconnected beauty that it is, you know, the greatest teacher, the greatest expression of the teachings of awakening. So that's how I see that story and how I relate to it, and to overcome the unbelievably outdated, patriarchal, hierarchical system that, what?
Caricature. At this point, it just feels like a caricature of itself. And actually,
yeah, like, ugh, we're so over it, and I'm so disinterested in that I don't really even often want to identify with being a quote unquote Buddhist, because it's just, you know, it's not serving. That part is not serving. So let's imagine her anew. You know, we all have Buddha nature, and there is tremendous patriarchal aversion to women in the system, even though they talk a different language. It's there, and I don't need to go into all of that. We all probably know enough. It's in every spiritual tradition, not just Buddhism. So that's also part of the big change that we're living through. And so I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, sweetheart. I'm going to just one more here. Well, there's lots more here actually, but and I just want to say my caricature outburst isn't so much about patriarchy within Buddhism. For me, it's the state of our planet as it is. And another of the things that gives me hope when we're, you know, busy electing idiots who want to kill our planet as fast as they possibly can. In myself, in my own journey, I know that before I'm about to have a huge breakthrough, generally speaking, I become as unbearable as I possibly could be, as some aspect of myself surfaces to become made conscious so completely that I can no longer unconsciously live out that reality. Like I become a caricature of myself. I become the very worst before it flips, before I go, oh, and the whole thing comes crumbling down. Or I look at ourselves now and it's like, yeah, the very worst of everything is surfacing. But why is it the worst? Well, it's the worst because it's been forgotten and discarded and left and shamed. And every symptom, every nightmarish symptom that we're seeing in this world is unlove. It's the opposite of love. And so again, why the women? Because we've got the capacity to love everything. I mean, we may not show it very well because we're so busy not loving ourselves, but do we have that capacity? Yes, that's what we're made for. We are made for that. So Dana, it's hard for me to distinguish what the call of my soul is. I think we should end with this.
Okay.
I have a few directions I've received, but I feel pulled in several directions and wish for focus. Should we just get more quiet, more soft, more listening to the heart in faith that the clarity will come? I'll just give my answer here and then I'll let Cynthia be properly wise. I once had this, my brother was a trance channel for a while, and he once said in the middle of channeling, you cannot steer a stationary object. He said, just start down the runway, just start, just do something. And then when you take off, if you're going in the wrong direction, the winds of life can change you, change your direction. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my God, that's brilliant. Because how many people are stopped before they start? Because is this the right thing? Am I going to get it wrong? Am I good enough? Like, none of that matters anymore. Frankly, none of the stories that we tell ourselves matter anymore, including, is this the right thing? Or is that the right thing? Or am I listening to the call of my soul deeply enough? Not ridiculing you here, but it's like we do such a number on ourselves in the, am I going to get it right place? If you listen to what brings you joy, to what answers your longings, to what makes sense to yourself, to what makes you come more alive, to what seems to answer the questions in you that are causing frustration, if you can find something that answers that and put yourself to it, everything else will start taking care of itself. That's my answer. Cynthia.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily need to add anything, except I would say this, is to trust. And if it's not clear, if you're feeling conflicted or you don't know, you have to sit with that. You have to be with that and allow yourself to just be with that, with the not knowing until it becomes clear. And you have to trust, we all have to trust something so much larger than ourselves is operating here. And there will be a moment, I guarantee you, there will be a moment where it will go, oh, that's it. Or a phone call will come in, or you will read something that will trigger the aha moment. And you have to be open to that, and you have to not talk yourself out of it. Recognize the signs and omens and stay with it. It's the most precious thing.
And if there's fear there, you're on the right path, yes. Largely speaking, because inside our fear are our gifts.
Yeah.
Largely speaking, it's where we've shut down from ourselves in some way. And so there's the gift will offer you, or the path will offer you a path of self-reclamation. The two cannot not go together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Cynthia, mwah, bless you for just your extraordinary self. I am so excited. I feel like this is a little treasure vase of an offering, that this is going to go out in the world. I hope it calls as many people in as it possibly can. I want to get your Tara Gaia offering filled up. Well, let's get people to Ghost Ranch. Let's get this offering out to as many people between us as we know. So if you're here, please can you think about all the women in your life that you would love to see in ceremony on behalf of the earth, and send them this recording. And let's call and call and call. Let's gather the women on behalf of Gaia. We will send you all the details that you've requested. We'll send you all the details of what's coming up for Cynthia. We'll send you the details of the call for us that's coming up. Go back to treesisters.org/loving-Gaia. All of this will be in the email. Hopefully it'll answer all your questions. Cynthia will get everything out of the chat and we'll send it to you. Tara will be doing that right now. Tara, darling, thank you so much for manning the backstage for us so beautifully and doing the technology. Yeah. And let's just come back into circle. Let's complete in circle and close sacred space. So if we're still here, and even if we're not, let's just imagine ourselves standing up, holding hands around this spiraling white light. Feel that texture of creation that is throbbing through all of our bodies, through every cell of us. And as you breathe in, know that you're breathing in Gaia. That you're breathing her into this body that is made of Gaia. That this body is crafted from her, and this body will go back to her. And that in this moment, she will be aware that we are here for her, awakening to her, awakening to ourselves, awakening to each other, bowing to a greater possibility that can only come through us if we hold space for it, for her, and for each other. Cynthia, bless you. Let's just bow. Let's say thank you to the circle. Thank you to the space. Thank you to Mother. And we hope to see you on the 6th of February. I hope Cynthia sees as many of you as possible on her free call coming up very shortly. Details will be included. Thank you. Take care.
Love you.